Hello everyone, this is Dan Gramza, and welcome to Gramza Market Studies for Friday, November 6th. Greetings from San Mateo. Now, let's take a look at these stock indices. One of the things we were looking for, actually for the last 3 days, is some type of follow through. As we discussed earlier, that this movement to the downside I felt last week, especially on Friday, just was not a bearish setup. Even though it's a big red candle and even though it does imply sellers are coming into this market, it's the structure that we're looking at overall. I think that was important. Took a while to get started, but it seems like yesterday we finally did get some follow through. It was healthy in a lot of these markets that we're looking at in these indices. But the big deal is today. Are they confident? Are they stronger? Are they different than they were last week at this very same time when you and I kind of had a similar conversation? It was here. It was on that Thursday, and could we get some follow through on Friday? And we did not, as some things came out that made people a little less confident. So today, are we going to see that confidence return to this market? And that's what it's going to say to us. So what are we looking for? Based upon this structure, we are looking for an up move in these markets. And today would be the day for it. In the currency markets, let's take a look at those and see how they've been reacting. Relatively quiet day. And what did we say yesterday? That we were not looking for a big day. Today we're looking for unchanged to higher. And basically we had unchanged type days across the board. In these currencies, we are looking for follow through. Same issues. We want to see it today. We want a nice healthy close for the end of the week. So we are looking for unchanged to higher, not because that's what we want, because I think structurally that's what this market is saying to us. Now when it comes to interest rates, well, the short end of the curve continues to kind of grind away at it here. The 10 years, well, we're seeing sellers coming into this market. A little bit of a rest in terms of yesterday's action. And today is going to be critical for these guys too. What are we really, based upon the other things that we're talking about? If the stock indices get stronger, if the currencies get stronger, we would expect these guys to actually back off. And remember, the notes and the bonds are also on these lows at critical levels. So very interesting setups for both of these. They both imply actually bullish action. They are not bearish. After this big move, again, we were not looking for a big move today in the bonds and in the notes. They both behave properly. So today's kind of that critical junction. It's really 50-50 in terms of the setup I think that you and I see here for these markets. You can make arguments for both sides. It's just not that clean. So in that respect, if you and I were short going into these, we'd want to stay short. Okie doke. Let's move on. Let's get over to those metals. Gold grinding away at it. Need to be cautious up at these levels. Silver, same thing. We have containment shadows here now. This market could be a sideways type market. What are we looking for? We are looking for a market that closes above these shadows. That's the ideal close for this week in the metals. Copper continues to struggle. Yesterday's action, day before, we saw a market make new highs on selling, really just having trouble. We're not seeing strong follow through to the downside. This again is a sign of a market that it's going to continue to go sideways here. It's going to continue to struggle until it gets a message to make a commitment, and it just hasn't had that yet. Crude oil also is going sideways, relatively quiet. Wouldn't be surprised to see some of that same action today or stronger prices as we go into the weekend. Natural gas, well, again, we've seen some buyers coming in. The issue is follow through. Just don't have a lot of confidence in this market. I think we'd expect lower prices coming into today's session. And when it comes to the grains, well, soybeans, critical level for soybeans. Wouldn't be surprised to find some buyers coming down at this market. Seen a little bit of that in Asia, but yesterday this kind of fell out of bed. It really came back through that range, and to be expected. as that backed off. In fact, that difference here between that green line and that red line per contract, that would be $450 is the dollar value of that move. And in corn, since it did also trade back through that red line, that difference there would be $400 between that red line and this green line, that buy point. Wheat, on the other hand, is just hanging right in there. We've seen a little bit of buying coming into this market, but again, I think that setup is 50-50. Even on beans and corn, what are we looking for, by the way? We're looking for unchanged to lower. We're looking for a relatively quiet day in these markets going into the weekend. That would be more typical behavior for the structures that you and I are seeing here. Okay, well, that concludes today's market studies. Hope you found a few ideas helpful. Have an absolutely wonderful weekend, and I'll be with you next week. And in the meantime, take care.